Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast here on a Wednesday, along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna is in here producing as well, and we see a bunch of people already in the chat because I guess we piqued your interest a little bit as to the conversation that we're going to get into here today on the podcast as we discuss a little bit of what's going on around the postseason in the NBA. The Denver Nuggets coming back, taking a 3-2 series lead over Minnesota after being down 2-0. And a big part of that is because of one Aaron Gordon. Part of their championship run a season ago, how he has transformed his career after being a number one overall pick for the Orlando Magic. But he has seamlessly accepted his role, slid right into that role, so much so that he is a huge part. When we look at Michael Porter Jr. and the talent that he possesses, you would look at the scoring and say he might be the third most important player on that team behind Jokic and Jamal Murray. Not the case because of how good Aaron Gordon is in his role. But do the Sixers have a player like that currently on their roster? Probably not. That's why they're not playing right now.
Not probably, definitely
There you go. So now we want to talk with you all as we bounce around the league and we hear different names that may be available from the names that we discussed, from Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Brandon Ingram, talking about LeBron James, bringing up Kyle Kuzma on our Tuesday show. If you missed it, go check it out after this one to tap into that one. But we want to go around the association.
And by the way,
bit.
Kyle Kuzma is kind of a candidate for
He is kind of a candidate.
Not at the Aaron Gordon level, but certainly a guy who we just, if you want our thoughts on Kyle Kuzma, watch the Kyle Kuzma show. But I do think some of the ideas that were applied in that show are what we're going to discuss today, which is, and I want to just, before we all, make our cases on different players and debate and whatnot, what I went to Devon and Derek with last night watching Nuggets Wolves was, and we'll probably expand beyond this group, but the general idea was to acquire Aaron Gordon basically at the same time that the Nuggets did. So somebody in roughly year 5 to 7 of their career, someone who ideally was playing a high volume, important role on another team that would come here and be recast as more of a glue guy, someone who focuses less on the scoring and leading a team and more on the dirty work, the rebounding, the effort plays, like switching assignments on defense depending on who the top guy is on the other team from night to night. And so that was kind of the basis for how I wanted to approach these guys with it. And we all came up with our own list of names, or at least I know I did, and I believe the other two did, and we're going to see who emerges. So does somebody want to go first with a candidate to be Sixers Aaron Gordon?
Well, I think the most obvious direct parallel is Jeremy Grant. If he rededicated himself to being a
slightly older, but
like a player who's been playing way above his role, or his what should be his primary role over the last couple of years. Because of that, is not, I don't think, anywhere near the defender he was earlier on in his career. But if you believe in the shot, and the shot over the last 2 years has been pretty good, and even before that, it was good enough. If you believe in his shot and you believe he will rededicate himself to being that, sort of like third or fourth option and just give everything he has defensively, then he's still young enough where I think he has the physical tools to be an impact defender. Like I said, I don't think he's necessarily been that over the last couple of years when he's been tasked with being a primary option. And I have zero interest in him being like a high usage 20 shot per game kind of guy.
Right.
And I don't know whether or not he would be willing to buy into the role that he is ideally suited for. But he was like the first one that came to mind of just overtaxed as a focal point or close to a focal point on offense. And because of that, has let a little bit slip of what his ideal role should be, but has the tools to slip back into that.
Yeah, so he's a good example of the archetype, right? And I think the tricky thing with him is on two different fronts. One, Portland seems to value him, I would say overvalue him based on where they're at in their rebuild process, like the professional side of it.
That. And also, to be clear, I'm not saying the Sixers should target him or prioritize him because I don't think he wants to go back to the role and he's overpaid.
And
I'm just bringing up a name of an archetype that would fit that, yes.
The reason that Jeremy left Denver in the first place, where he was in basically the Aaron Gordon role before Aaron Gordon came and took that to another level, is because it was known and it was reported on by people in Denver at the time Jeremy wants to stretch his wings. Jeremy wants more touches. He wants to be able to, frankly, make more money as a featured player, and certainly don't begrudge him for that with the shelf life these guys have for their careers. But he made a conscious choice to say, I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
And so that is the hardest battle. If for whatever reason, let's say Portland drops their asking price, things fall into place where the Sixers might go after Jeremy Grant specifically, that would be the toughest part of it, is figuring out how to sell Jeremy on being someone that, frankly, he just hasn't wanted to be for the last 3-4 years or so.
And that's also something with Gordon, too. When he came up, he was playing the 3 a lot. Now, part of that was they had a lot of bigs in Orlando, but part of that was he wanted to be known as a multifaceted, multi-positional guy who could create from the perimeter, and because of that, force himself into a role that probably wasn't suited for him. So you had to almost buy into the fact that he would walk that back. And he has done that successfully as well as you could possibly hope for. He is also probably in the perfect spot for him. Like Jokic will make someone like that look incredible all the time. But being able to figure out which players will have gone from a role player to a focal point and be willing to go back to a role player again is very tough. Aaron Gordon is an interesting example because he's one of the few that was willing to do that. Jeremy is similar in the fact that he went from role player to focal point, and I still think a lot of us don't believe he would want to go back to being a role player. But then again, 6 years ago, I'm not sure I would have believed that Aaron Gordon would either. So it's a really tough projection to make.
Well, the best example, by the way, prior to Aaron Gordon, was another guy who played in Philadelphia.
Iggy,
was Iguodala, who went from
being the guy,
the featured player here, to had that 1 year in Denver where it was like a by committee type of situation, and they were really very good that year. And then he goes to Golden State and he launches his career into a completely different stratosphere at that point.
And other examples may not be as good as Iguodala, but Derek White, for what he was in San Antonio when they weren't very good, they were okay. He played a big part in that. Goes to Boston, and we're talking about him being an all-star now. That's how good of a role player is, accepting who he is on that basketball team. And some, again, saying that he might be more important than someone on that team. I'll give mine first and start here. He's a top 5 pick in his draft class. He recently signed a 4-year, $90 million deal.
I think I know exactly who you're talking about.
And I'm going to start with the Philadelphia native DeAndre Hunter.
Oh, no, it's a different one. Okay.
So different role, but he was a focal point of what they were doing as a top 5 pick. DeAndre Hunter averaged last season 15 points per game, right around 4 boards, less than 2 assists, shot the ball decently, enough over his career where you look at him and say he can shoot from 3-point range. He can knock down some shots there from that range. So with me, I went with him with the 6'8" frame, being able to play away from the basketball where you have Trae Young and DeAndre Hunter dominating the basketball as much, Dejounte Murray dominating the basketball as much as they have, where Hunter had to fall back in his role. He even went back to the bench where they would start Saddiq Bey sometimes, start DeAndre Hunter. And as we've talked about with the Atlanta Hawks, they just recently won the number 1 overall pick for the upcoming draft on Sunday. He needs to get the hell out of there. And Jalen Johnson, that's really his spot now. Jalen Johnson played really well last season in year 2 coming out of Duke, where he's playing really well. So DeAndre Hunter needs a change of scenery. And that contract is not bad. He's still young enough where he can play and I think be a similar type of player that right now we're seeing from Aaron Gordon. Is he willing to accept that? Can he play at home? I don't have the answer to that part because I don't know how he would feel about playing back here in Philadelphia. But getting away from that situation in a much better situation here where he will get looks because of the cutting off ball. Is even though Trae Young averages 10, 11, 12 assists on any given season, when you look at it and you watch it, it's different. So for me, I look at DeAndre Hunter and I start there with DeAndre Hunter. What do you think?
I like DeAndre Hunter. I think the problem with him is that Atlanta wanted him to be that exact guy, and he's playing next to the high-volume guy, and for whatever reason, his game has not taken off the way I guess you would hope. It could just be, look, I think there's been enough. And I have another Atlanta guy that we've talked about quite a bit that I'll bring up at some point later in the show. I think there's been enough problematic stuff happening in Atlanta that I would just say give any of those guys a change of scenery shot, right?
And it might work, right.
And someone else who was a former Atlanta Hawk is someone I want to bring up later in the show as well. So I'm with you. Like if you just look at the prototype size, he can do a little bit of everything offensively, like can shoot the three, attack a closeout, but certainly he's not going to be like the featured guy, right? And I don't love him as a playmaker, but if you're just asking him to be a standstill shooter, attack off the close, cut off a Joel Embiid post-ups or face-ups, what have you, put him in that role, and then if he stays healthy is the other thing, right?
Sure.
Like I believe he hasn't played more than 67 games.
That was, yeah.
And that was the high mark.
Yeah.
He played 63, 23, 53, 67, 57. So health is the big thing with him, right? Like I think that's probably a bigger challenge for him than anything. But his three-point volume ticked up a little bit this year, so that's good for coming here. He's an okay rebounder, not a great rebounder, so I would like to see more of a commitment there from him. But yeah, like I haven't heard anything about him that would suggest it would be particularly hard for him to come home and play at home. I know that's certainly, it's easy to say on paper, like, oh, it sounds great, like the homecoming, but especially for a guy who's 26, 27, that's different than Kyle Lowry coming home at 38. Who's just like, hey, I don't care about all the off court.
Yeah, he was in Virginia, in Atlanta now all these years. He's away from it, but he's old enough where he might be able to do it. Not saying that he can't. His makeup seems like he could. And the injury history, of course, that's a big piece, 100%. The playmaking part, even when I looked at Aaron Gordon, you saw stuff before in Arizona, but not really. And when he got to Orlando, he was kind of thrust into that role because they never had enough good guards to really do certain things where but he's also playing with Nikola Jokic. So his playmaking is much, much better. When you're playing next to Nikola Jokic, you have the shooters that you do with Porter and Murray around him, and even Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as well. So that playmaking there, I didn't really see that part of his game elevating the way that it has in Denver. So I do also think the personnel around you makes your playmaking look that much better too when you have that. Yeah,
100%. I think if Aaron Gordon was still on a different team, people would nitpick some of the deficiencies of his game, just like DeAndre Hunter. There's not a whole lot. He's passable at a lot of things, but there's not many skill sets you would bank on offensively. But if you put him next to one of the most prolific passers, and really, I think a lot of people say, look, Will, he's a good cutter, but it's really hard to actually actualize that skill set on a regular basis. And Jokic is perhaps the best I've ever seen at that, certainly of this generation. So that allows someone like Gordon, or if Hunter were on that team, to look a little more complete and a little more consistent.
All right. I mentioned that I had some former or present Hawks to get to because the Hawks just feel like one of the great examples.
Target the Hawks.
Because I would say they're a similar franchise to where Orlando was with Aaron Gordon, right? Where that they might be looking to blow it up. And
they got the number one pick, and they
have a high pick. They might just completely retool. But so I'll go with the guy who's not currently on the Hawks, but was John Collins.
Interesting.
John Collins was someone who played close to a featured role in Atlanta. 20 point per game, got with 20 and 10 guy in his best season, right? And the problem with him has long been what makes him happy? What is he comfortable with? Or
not playing with Trae Young.
What does he want? And the more guys are unhappy playing with Trae Young, the more you go, maybe he's the problem and not all the other guys.
That being said, skill set wise, Trae Young was a pretty good fit for him.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I still give the side eye to John Collins. Right. But if you look at the ingredients that are there, still a nuclear vertical athlete, right? Like a guy who is going to finish basically any lob thrown in his direction.
Yes.
We have seen in a playoff setting can be a very impactful offensive rebounder, someone who, if you're watching the Knicks series, for example, and you're watching all these guys fly in from different angles to grab loose balls and things that are caroming off weird angles off the rim, John Collins has been that type of player in a playoff environment. He hasn't shot the ball enough, but he has generally been a fairly consistent, at least league average shooter during his career, which is right in that category that Aaron Gordon has been at throughout his career. And I think if you look at it from the Sixers perspective, if he is like the third or fourth guy, depending on who else is in the lineup for them, if he's the third or fourth guy in that starting group, he can focus on doing all the, like, he's a weak side rim protector off of Joel Embiid. So everything's being funneled toward Joel. But as Joel has to step up and meet guys in the pick and roll to stop the little runners, floaters, or the dump downs, John Collins is then there as your secondary rim protector. John Collins is then there as a rebounder on the weak side. I don't love him, all the awareness issues that he has defensively, but the hope would be that you get some more of the buy-in in the same way that they got from Kelly Oubre this year, that you can leverage the physical tools and maybe get him to lock in. And then once you get to the backup groups, you use John Collins, maybe not as the small five, but he's certainly a good partner for Tyrese Maxey in pick and rolls. Like he's had some issues with throwing lobs and things at this level.
You know I was going to go there too.
But he at Kentucky, he leaned too heavily on throwing lobs. Yeah. Well, if you want to be that guy, John Collins is a great example of someone you might put it. So I know a lot of people have thought a lot and have discussed the idea of, well, the Sixers need to play more multi-big lineups, like just so they're not getting killed on the rebounds. So Joel doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting defensively. And in some ways, I think John Collins fits the bill. Maybe after, he leaves Atlanta, he goes to Utah, and they're just they're in no man's land right now as a team. What are they going to do? Are they going to full send build around Markkanen moving forward, or are a lot of these guys going to get moved and they strip it down and try to go the full draft picks route? So he's somebody I would keep an eye on. And he is really like the spirit of the question to me is like someone who people don't value a ton right now, but still is like, I could see that guy making an impact. I'm not, we could all sit here and say, oh, hey, this guy's really good and would be good in Philadelphia. I'm trying to find the miscast guys, the guys who with a kind of a crappy reputation, maybe not crappy reputation, damaged reputation, who would benefit the most from playing on a team that has real expectations and real guys around them.
So you're going to make that sales pitch to Joe? Don't they have a bit of a history there?
Yeah, he played with Andre Drummond.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll be all right.
Yeah, it'll be fine. What do you think of Collins?
The decision-making, I question, I think, a lot. And it's one thing, like, you can say you got the best out of Kelly Oubre, but it's one thing to do that on a minimum. It's another one, it's $50 million owed to him. And I don't think Collins is on a bad contract per se, but the low-volume shooting, the defensive decision-making, I have my concerns there. I do think that in terms of adding a vertical athlete and hopefully Tyrese growing as a lob passer, I think there's some validity to that. I've been on the record, I don't love two big lineups. And for the most part, I think if you want to fix your rebounding problems, you get better perimeter defenders and more help from the wings on rebounding rather than going to two big lineups. So I'm not in love with it, but I agree as a general principle, as a distressed asset and a player who could theoretically be moved to a right role, you could get more out of him. I'm just not sure if Philadelphia is that right role.
Yeah, like the name, don't love the fit. Just because I appreciate the rebounding part of it. I appreciate being able to be that secondary big man if Embiid's off the floor.
You guys are really going to hate some of these other names I throw out there.
And that pick and roll partner with Tyrese Maxey, that could really be something. And I also think as good as we know Trae Young to be as far as a passer goes, and that just fits. While Tyrese Maxey may not be as good of a passer as Trae Young, I also wonder if the environment next to Tyrese Maxey, just because of his personality, how cool of a guy he is, how fun he is to play with, how encouraging he is to his teammates, if that would just help out just a little bit. In your point of bringing up, that stuff matters. Just being happy. And he wasn't happy in Atlanta after a while, and that's why he was traded to Utah. Utah right now, not in that space. And look, Lauri Markkanen was in that spot. That's why he was traded, a couple of times from where he was, from Chicago to Cleveland, now to Utah, and he has finally found his home. Sometimes you just need to get away and find some happiness for where you are, and they appreciate and value you for what you are. So even though Maxey is not that great, he's good with Embiid with the pick and roll stuff, that lob potential, because Embiid is not that great of a lob partner, that lob potential with John Collins would be interesting. The contract, as you talked about, would be something to that you can just fit right into what it would be for. But Derek, I know you have yours, and we will get to those, of course. But we got to talk about some other cool stuff as we bring in some of these players. It starts to get a little sunny outside.
Well, it's not sunny outside today, but presumably it will be sunny throughout the summer in Philadelphia. And if you want to prepare for that, you got to get together with our friends at Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades that are built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product. Durable frames on all their shades, crystal clear optics. They are the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. And they have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. You guys have seen me wear my pair of Shady Rays that I brought into the studio for our Future is Bright segment. Thank you to our friends at Shady Rays for that. But I certainly wear them outside of the studio as well. They're with me in the car at all times. So when I'm driving home, around when sunset, sunrise, whenever it might be, when that glare is hitting the most, when it rains, when it snows. People don't realize when it snows is actually one of the times you need sunglasses the most because of the sun hitting that bright white on the ground, a lot of reflections, a lot of other things. So all year round, you need Shady Rays. And by the way, you can bring them on vacation. You bring them to the beach. They're nice and stylish as well. And if those shades ever go missing, whether it's during the summer on vacation or any other time, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. So if you don't love your shades, exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There is no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. So exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. That's a lot of people and a lot of stars.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
A lot of shades, a lot of sunglasses.
We also want to make sure that we tell you about Rite Aid. Protect yourself and your family by staying up to date on your immunizations. Rite Aid pharmacists are specially trained, certified immunizers. Did you know that most vaccines are no cost with insurance or through government plans like Medicare Part D? Are you unsure what vaccine you need? Get a personalized recommendation from a Rite Aid pharmacist. And you have questions about vaccines, you can stop in and ask a Rite Aid pharmacist. Rite Aid pharmacists can vaccinate for COVID-19, shingles, pneumonia, tetanus, whooping cough, chickenpox, and more. Select Rite Aid stores have a dedicated pharmacist ready to administer vaccines and answer all of your questions. If you have questions on what immunizations you need, if you're not sure, if you're up to date, or if you're feeling nervous to ask questions, a Rite Aid pharmacist will take the time to make personalized recommendations based on your health history and discuss any concerns. No questions are too small. Just walk in and schedule an appointment Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. State, age, and health restrictions may apply. Ask a Rite Aid pharmacist for details.
All right, so far we have from Kyle, John Collins. I went with DeAndre Hunter. We broke both of those players down, their potential fit with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and the Philadelphia 76ers in that Aaron Gordon role. Derek, who's your first one?
I mean, we had a show recently talking about him, and I wasn't necessarily high on his fit, but Brandon Ingram is certainly in that class. Especially if you get him into because I think when I complain about Ingram, mostly it's when he's trying to create at the top of the key.
Yeah.
If you get him back to buy into where he was 3 years ago, as a 6 3-point attempt per game kind of guy, and especially off of the catch, I think he can grow into that skill set. So I think he is someone who has been miscast. I think he's more of a secondary creator, and I think he does have some vision when that happens. I just don't want him creating in a pick and roll at the top of the key. But going back, I'm just not sure he would buy into that. And his reluctance to shoot over the years, like I said, 3 years ago, I thought he was on a trajectory where he'd be a very useful player in sort of like that third star kind of environment. But he's taken a step back in his willingness to shoot. I think he's taken a step back defensively, certainly from where he was as a prospect. And what he has focused on over the last couple of years are the parts of his game that I think I like the least. So it comes down to, will he buy in? Are you confident he will buy in? And is he going to have the confidence to launch away at the volume that he needs to launch? Because if he does, I think he can make that shot. It's just there's a whole lot of questions there.
He's a 3-level scorer that uses 1.5 levels currently. Like that's the problem. The skills are there. Like the actual mechanical skill to be the guy everyone believes he is there. It's why he's so frustrating, because You see him have seasons, multiple seasons in a row, taking 6 threes a game, making them at a good clip, scoring 20-plus points a game, adding to his playmaking. Like, went from basically a 0 playmaker as a rookie to a guy who could get 5 or 6 assists in a game and not really have to overextend himself to do so. To Derek's point, the question is just, how much of the stuff that he wants to do you have to give him to incentivize him to be the player that you want him to be otherwise, which is the glue guy, which is the person who helps make everything go. And that is unclear to me. I think if you're going to make the case for Ingram, and I know we talked about him quite a bit recently, the way that I would sell it, or in my head, the way I'm selling it to myself would be, okay, in New Orleans, where it's him and Zion, I could see why he's not willing to be the guy to take the step back. Zion's only available like half the time. Yeah. And even when he is, I don't think he's so much better than Brandon. Like, I think Zion, like full peak Zion is clearly better than Brandon Ingram. But you only get that guy for what, like a month out of the entire season. Mm-hmm. And so if you're Brandon Ingram, who, while he's had on and off injury issues, I'd say is relatively healthy and is in the lineup most of the time, why are you willing to change, or why would you think I need to change myself for this other guy who has proven nothing, has won nothing at this level, or has won as much as you have? Like, that's a hard thing to pull off, where maybe you come to Philadelphia, or it doesn't have to be Philadelphia, but in this example, he comes there and Joel Embiid is clearly in a tier of player that is above him. And he says, okay, I want to win. I can still get my numbers. I can still be a critical piece. And maybe that's how you sell him on that. I'm just not sure that's happening with him right now, as he's right ahead of his contract here and probably hoping to get quite a bit of money next offseason.
Yeah. And even with that, with the trade targets that we've talked about with Butler and George, Ingram is certainly in that upper tier of the possible available people who might be on the market that you certainly have to listen and see with the phone call what they're talking about, what David Griffin is talking about for him, because he can score. Again, we've seen it. He's made the All-Star team, but he's also he's so up and down, Jekyll and Hyde of a player that it will drive you nuts, especially if you're making a move like this to acquire that player. And how many years does Joel Embiid have left? Mm-hmm. You want to make sure you capitalize and maximize with the potential that you have with those other players. And he's a talent. And then what? He's talented. He's a 3-level scorer. But when you have 1.5, like Kyle said, that's frustrating because you know the guy can do it. He's not Tobias Harris, where people will go back to that part of it. But it's frustrating when it does get to that piece. Who's your second one? I'll give my second one after yours. Or so you want to go back to me? Do
you want me to bring up a current Hawks player or go to in a different direction?
Go to the current Hawks player, because we might have a
It's Dejounte. Dejounte's the very obvious, because if you look at how he played in San Antonio, wasn't even like a better team, right? But the defensive stuff was in another galaxy from where it is at right now. And I think if you're looking at the type of profile you want in a backcourt partner with Tyrese, you don't want someone who necessarily is going to dominate the ball, but you do need someone who's going to take some of the creative burden off of him. And the hope would be that where Atlanta failed, you can succeed, that you can convince Dejounte you're going to get enough touches and enough of the stuff as a pick and roll guy, being the bench captain when Tyrese sits. And I don't know how you want to structure it in terms of lineups, but you would structure it in a way that he can run the team and help Maxey out while also getting him to buy in and be the guy that, frankly, he was before he came to Atlanta, where he's making off-ball disruptive plays as a defender. Somebody who at the point of attack is slithering around screens, poking balls loose, and doing the sort of thing that Derek is talking about, right? Where you fix the rebounding problem by not having so many guys just coming downhill constantly at Joel Embiid. And maybe you can get him to take more of those catch and shoot jumpers depending on where you put him on the floor. Unfortunately, and the reason that he would be available as a distressed asset is because That was what Atlanta was hoping for, that Trey would get some of his burden taken off of him, that it would be he's the defensive guy to play next to Trey. And instead of that happening, what has happened instead is that Dejounte has gotten sucked into the Trey Young vortex of, I don't need to give a shit off the ball. I don't need to do this. Like, I'm one of the stars of the team. So to get the guy that you want in Philadelphia, you need to just like completely reprogram him. And oh, by the way, on top of all this, the things that I had heard throughout the season, and not coming from the Sixers, this is people around the league, teams who were inquiring, maybe in LA, some other teams that were inquiring about Murray. The word that was out there during the season was he wants to be the guy. Like, he wants to be the ball handler. And that is not happening here. But he is a clutch guy. There is the relationship there. You'd be able to suss it out ahead of time. Is this a Dejounte wants to be the number one problem, or Dejounte can't fucking stand playing with Trey Young thing? And so if you can get him back in that mindset of where he was as an ascending guy in San Antonio, I think he checks a ton of boxes.
Yeah. It's going to be the exact same question a lot of people ask me when I go to my next podcast.
Still good option, in my opinion, depending on what they ask for. That part of wanting to be the guy, you're going to have to accept that really quickly, man, because that's not happening. That's not going to fly here. So the profile, though, in the backcourt with Maxey is a really good one with the length, the defense. If he can buy in back to that player,
that's always my thing with him.
Thing.
If he was as good of a defender as his reputation suggests he has, I would buy into his other warts. I just don't think he's been at that level for a couple of years.
You don't think it's in there, or you just think he doesn't want to do it anymore? Because when we saw it, you scouted him, you looked at him a lot.
That's a very fair question. I don't know if he's lost half a step, but I think it's probably more disinterest or focusing on other things like creation. Maybe it's just harder. Maybe he doesn't have the energy. I truthfully don't know. But every time I watch him, he's just not the defender he was in San Antonio. He's just not. And to be honest, I didn't like him in college either, but that was mostly for his offensive limitations.
Right, the
and
jumper
decision making.
was
Yes, it was a
rough
train wreck.
coming out of
Maybe that expanded role that Kyle mentioned about him wanting the basketball. We've seen that. That's what, once he made the All-Star team, he was like, all right, it's a go. The defense, I've already stamped myself, made my name in the league.
Yeah.
Now the offense is here. I've made the All-Star team. I'm not going back. You can do both. That's why we call you two-way players. You can do both.
Yeah.
You're allowed, but it's certainly a different name, a good name. And you wonder, is it going to be him or Young if they decide to trade someone because they have the number one overall pick?
It could be both, but
it could be both.
It's at the very least, it's a loser leaves town type thing where one of those guys is out of there.
Well, that's a good name though. I do like that name. I would be interested in that name. I would be. Wouldn't be mad at it. All right, let me tell you guys and gals and all of you out there, as you get ready, listen, the baseball team is just on fire.
Cooking.
Right, even when they win the close games, you win. You win them differently. Come back, you're down, you're trailing 4-0, you come back, win 5-4 over the weekend. You win again where the guy goes complete game. You're one of your ace pitchers. We didn't say it yesterday. We said that they were on the verge of winning and some things happening. Almost had a no-no. It was a complete game, though. We don't see those very often in today's baseball. But with that being said, we're talking about the Philadelphia Phillies, and today we are brought to you by our good friends at BetParx app. Get in the zone with BetParx Sportsbook app. Get it on your phone like I have right here. Money is in the moment, and they do play New York again as part of their series. They're going for right now to knock that team off. Everybody's basking in all the wins that they have over the stinking New York team because nobody likes them. Neither one of those New York teams. None of them. But if you want to make a bet and win big with all-day action, you have to go to our good friends at BetParx Sportsbook app. Win your first $10 bet and earn $125 in sports bonus bets. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. So get in on your baseball team going against New York and seeing if they can knock that stinking squad off once again. But if you want to go to the basketball side of things, 2 good games again tonight in the series. Boston looking to close out Cleveland at home. And the second one, which has been a fun series to watch. OKC back in Oklahoma City taking on Dallas. If you want to play some wagers there, once again, you go to our good friends at the Bet Park Sportsbook app. Download the app, play along with us. You must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We also, a little bit of self-promotion here, right?
Yes.
I want to tell you about what we're doing around here. At PHLY, we just announced today.
Be on the lookout, folks.
That we have an upcoming golf outing.
Yes.
I wish I remember. There we go. At Valley Brook Country
13th.
Club in Blackwood, New Jersey on July 13th.
Look at Jaws sponsoring us.
Look at that.
Wow, look at that.
So that'll be fun. I believe there's unlimited draft beer after the round is over, which is what I'm interested in more than the golf. But obviously, it will be a great opportunity to see a lot of people this summer. I probably won't be golfing. I don't know if either of you are golfing.
I'm not a good golfer. I don't know what the hell I'm doing out there.
Super producer Bree sounds like she might be golfing.
She
so
can
you guys
Golf
can
show.
is way too frustrating. It is. Every time I've
Thank
tried,
you.
I just get really, really pissed off.
I always tell people golf is the sport for the people that hate themselves.
Yes.
So that's how I feel about golf. But if you're a golfer, it'll be a great time. On top of that, there's all kinds of stuff going on with events throughout the year. We just had a live show on Watch Party at Manayunk Brewing Company, the Phillies gang.
Yep.
It was a good turnout for that.
I stopped
There are
by.
always tickets and giveaways and all sorts of things happening at these events. We also have our Die Hard program that we talk to you about a lot on this show, where you get access to exclusive content. It's a one subscription fee for the year. You get access to that content from myself, Derek, Bo, Zach, Charlie, John, Jim Salisbury, Les Bowen, all kinds of different people contributing to that throughout the company, as well as access to our Discord, where we're in there talking to the people, the fans. Quite often, you get a free shirt or free hat once a year. I think it's a great bargain. No better time to get involved than right now.
Go ahead and get signed up also for the this Saturday, the tailgate with the PHLY Phillies crew for the baseball game as they come back home. So make sure you check out
There you go.
all of our things there with the Die Hard partnership that we would have for you. That membership, you join us, you're part of the family. It's the community that we're trying to grow here.
What is that? Best start since '93?
Yeah.
Is that what I saw?
Yep.
There
And
you
first
go.
team to 30. Yeah, first team to 30 or something like that for the Phillies. They're good. So
Pretty good.
That's pretty fun. All right, let me throw a name. I want to throw a little wrinkle in here since you went with the guard. Can I throw a little wrinkle? A little change of scenery?
Sure.
How about we go to Portland and not Jeremy Grant, but we go with one Anfernee Simons.
Yeah.
As a guy who has been behind CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard, that young player, up-and-coming role, 6'3", 6'4", in terms of his frame, but he knows how to play off of other stars, so he has done it. He's also been the focal point when Damian Lillard left, traded to Milwaukee. Yes, Scoot Henderson comes in. Scoot Henderson wasn't ready either. Jeremy Grant, sure, but it still looks like right now that was Anfernee Simons' situation. That said, doesn't mean that Portland may not be ready to move on. His contract is very good, and he's still young enough. He has played with another small guard. Defensively, concerns there? Absolutely. But can you make up for that in the point production that he has on the other side? He shoots the three-pointer very well, as we know, and he can handle the ball in pick-and-roll situations. So I thought it was an interesting name, change of scenery. We've seen him play in the two different roles. The only issue, of course, as we talk about often, is a smaller backcourt with he and Maxey. But when you have Joel Embiid, does that change it when it's not Yusuf Nurkic or DeAndre Ayton in Portland, where you have a real big man that can score from the inside, and that guy can do a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
Anfernee Simons.
You can do a lot of stuff. I think
None of the stuff I actually want him to do.
I think the defense might be so bad that you can't pair him with Maxey.
He's super talented.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't
And that's why I
have,
went with the. That's why.
if you didn't have Maxey,
Yeah.
and you had like a real defensive-minded two guard, and if you were, when you're looking for the Aaron Gordon, that's not the type of guy that I would look for. But if you were looking for the guy who's got creative juice, the guy who can get his own shot, someone who I think my guess with him is if he's going to win somewhere, he's going to be the super sixth man type guy that comes in off the bench for a team in his early, like late 20s, early 30s. He's recast as like the high end. Maybe he's the fifth starter, but more than likely is like the Ginobili type or the Lou Williams type coming off the bench and just killing teams. He's very good, very, very good offensive player that's kind of hiding in plain sight. But for the stuff that I think the Sixers need, I think it's a tough sell. But I like him. I like him as a
he's progressed a lot. Like he came in the league. I didn't trust him to run any offense. I didn't trust the outside shot. He's still not a great passer, but his shot, he's a better passer and a better playmaker, and his shot has come a long way. So I like the progress he's made. But part of this, I think there's two real parts of this exercise. It's one, finding a player who's had a big role and willing to buy back into a smaller role. That's something that I think all of us here are sort of at a talent disadvantage on. We don't really know what makes a lot of these guys tick, so it's hard to predict that. The other one is Philadelphia the right spot for them to transition into that role? And I just think because of the defensive limitations, this would not be the right spot for him. But I would love to see him on a team that's more ready and willing and capable to compete, or at least compete for a playoff spot. But I just worry that this wouldn't be the right spot for him.
I just looked at it also as just for talking points. Of course, if you had those two guys in the backcourt and he's not playing the six-man role, but you did identify those big wings at the 3 and the 4 next to, of course, Embiid with those two, could that make up for any issues that you might have there? Because we have seen Maxey compete and get better defensively. Anfernee Simons, at that point, maybe he's the worst problem that they would have because we have seen Maxey compete the way that he has defensively in that role. So the scoring, because of the scoring, obviously, that's the only reason you bring him up, because he's not doing the Aaron Gordon type stuff that we've thrown out with the others, from Collins to Hunter and Ingram and Murray.
How many more names do you guys have?
That's a fun name. I have two more, but I have two more.
I also have some where like they weren't necessarily they weren't a high usage role that we're asking to go back, but they're also just people I think can fill the Aaron Gordon role. They might be role players now, or you project to be role players going forward.
So who you got?
You might want to close your ears on this one. Your cousin.
I left him off my list.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, he is the number one example to me.
He's fantastic at almost everything. I don't think he's quite a one option. I think he needs to go to a spot where he could be the best third option in the league. Yeah. Not that I know of any necessarily.
I think he's
like that,
so obvious that it's almost not worth talking about it, right?
Fair enough. I just I didn't want to leave that unsaid because he's sitting right here.
Yeah, of course. And when we talked about it before, I said I left him off the list.
Right.
So to let everybody know, I left him off the list. Yeah. But
I would have said Jalen Suggs before this year, but I think he figured so much stuff out that he might not be distressed at all anymore. But I think he's the type where
he was an option last year that you probably could have gotten.
Yeah, with the way he plays defense and the way he can get after it on the perimeter, like he would have fit that. Not that he's big like Aaron Gordon, but that defensive intensity, he would have fit like that as well. And similar, Herb Jones, I think, is like if you're talking about a guy who could be a super role player, third, fourth option type. Nobody's projecting him right now as a star, but he could fill that role for a decade.
Would be so good.
Yeah,
but
he's also not available.
Yeah, Mikal is the absolute apex predator of this entire category. So
I'll take a bow for him. There you go. Of course. If
you want to talk about closing your ears, the two guys I have left are close your ears in a different way.
Go.
All right. I'm trying to think of which one I want to do
real
first.
fast. Brian C says, would making Mikal on the team make my job tougher? No. Because we talk about stuff face to face. It's like
I was gonna say, it's not like Devon gets up here and says wild shit like I do.
And I would even. It's not like what were you doing?
Yeah.
That's not like I can't say that to him face to face that I wouldn't say it publicly. So no, I don't think it would be difficult because even at Villanova, when the one thing that I got on him, and of course it wasn't his fault, just how the game played out. Sweet 16. Against Wisconsin. He gave up the baseline to Nigel Hayes. And they lost the game partly because of that last play. I had to talk about it. It was okay. He wasn't mad at me. He was pissed at himself for giving up the baseline. So, no, I don't think it would be difficult at all. No.
We have one comment from Jonathan Chen. One of them is Ben Simmons, LMAO. No, professional video game players
Kyle
are not
threatened
introduced.
to walk off the set if either of us brought him up.
Former FaZe Clan members are not part of the show.
I have a feeling I might be walking off the set with one of the ones you're going to bring up because
this one might be it.
I don't know.
You ready for this? Derek, look at me.
No.
RJ Barrett.
Okay. That's not as bad as
why did Vince also say this one to me earlier? He said, I don't want to say this. I want to say this quietly.
Again, if you're trying to find someone that's in similar range, right? He's a top, 3 pick?
He was top
third
3
overall.
Yep.
Goes to the Knicks. Used as one of their primary guys early in his career. 20-point per game scorer. As they start to scale up and become a better team, it becomes less the RJ show and more the Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, what have you show. He ends up getting traded to Toronto as part of the Quickly deal for OG Anunoby. And frankly, looked like Maple Jordan up in Canada, right? Like I think he shot like 55% from the field, 39% from 3, all that. But if you're looking at someone who might be able to make that leap, he has been the featured guy, overextended as the featured guy. He's had and will always have the prototype, like shooting guard, small forward type size. So he can rebound, he can defend across a variety of matchups. If you need him to get a bucket, and I would hope that you're not leaning on him too much to get a bucket, but if you need him to go score, he will do some of the stuff that Tobias Harris used to do, unfortunately, but also think he's become, at least up until the stint in Toronto where they let him do a little too much, he's been a more willing three-point shooter. He was shooting like 5 threes a game first half of the season in New York, and that's been about between 5 and 6 for the last few years.
His percentages in Toronto were encouraging. I don't buy them, but they were at least encouraging.
But the volume has been there for the last few years enough that you would say, okay, if he's playing next to Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, I could see him being goaded into being a higher volume guy. And maybe here's the hard part with him. This has been the problem for him dating back to when he was an amateur, right? Like when he's playing with fucking Zion and he's playing in college, a guy who was a world-consuming star. One of the big problems for Duke was that RJ Barrett just wanted to keep playing like RJ Barrett and being like the featured player on that team. And he wasn't and should have been or shouldn't have been. So the question is, does RJ Barrett want to be the featured guy, which he probably will get to do, or at least be one of those guys in Toronto? Or does he care more about winning? Does he care more about, I will sacrifice I believe he's only 23 or 24, even though he's been in the league for about 5 years now. So now is about the time that guys figure out what are my priorities in my career. We saw it with Jeremy Grant, who we talked about at the top of the show. He got to like his mid to late 20s and said, I don't want to be a role player on a very good team. I want to be one of the guys on a team that will see how far I can carry us. We don't know what that path is for RJ Barrett as of yet. But if you're just looking at someone who has been and can be a good defender, someone who can help with rebounding, certainly not. Well, actually, he has become a better playmaker over the years. I still wouldn't trust him to be much more than a secondary playmaker, but someone who will do the dirty work, I think he's a decent candidate if you get him to buy in, but it's a big if.
Yeah. Here's the problem with someone like that. You're talking about a 23-year-old who needs to learn how to be a winning player, essentially, in terms of his playmaking, his shot selection, his three-point shooting. Like, there's a lot of growth that needs to happen. Joel Embiid's 30.
Yeah.
Like, when the Nuggets acquired Jokic, he was still pretty young. There was a long runway there.
It's you mean tough. Gordon?
Yeah, what did I say?
You said when they acquired Jokic.
When the Nuggets acquired Gordon, Jokic was still pretty young. There was a long runway there. They could grow together. Gordon could grow as a player. They could grow in terms of their fit and their chemistry together. It's hard for me to look at RJ Barrett, think he's going to fit well next to Joel Embiid right now. Mm-hmm. And if it's going to take a multi-year projection, you're just running out of time. Yeah. That's my concern with him.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think
I have never really liked him as a player.
No,
it's all the tools and the the maybes. It's basically he is similar to me when the Warriors traded for Wiggins, you have to convince yourself in a similar way.
Yeah.
Like our environment will make him different than he has been up to this point in his career.
For a year or two, Wiggins was a success story in his career.
Then he got the contract and it went right out the window.
He was good in that championship run. He was really good. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of RJ Barrett. To your point, you saw it with Zion, and even when Cam Reddish started to take over at Duke at the time, RJ Barrett just kind of slid down. He still went in that top 3, but he was trying to do RJ Barrett stuff. And in that role that they had there in Duke, those other two shined also during that time. So I remember being at a game one day. I had the day off, but I was still there. My daughter and I went to the game, and we were really close to the floor. And I'm sitting there watching him. You know, he's standing in the corner. He's in that corner row. He's clapping his hands and all that. You can see him get visibly frustrated. That's fine and all that. But when he got the ball, he didn't do much with it. Yeah. And then the next year, same thing. He would have these moments. He had some big moments in Toronto when he first got there. But I don't know if it'll ever really click with him and be a winning basketball player. So that one would be a tough one as far as.
But these are all tough. Like that's the whole point of the exercise. Is trying
to project it out.
It's easy to be like, hey, they should get LeBron James.
Sure.
Or they should go get Giannis to play for their team.
Yeah,
like,
that one
of course, I would love to get the perfect player to play next to these guys.
We've done those shows in the past week and a half. Yes.
All right, so we're going to go to another tough one. 25. I'm going back down south, going to Atlanta.
Another Atlanta.
Going another Atlanta. They need to get the hell out of there. I'm going with Saddiq Bey, 6'8", 6'7", 6'8". Can rebound the basketball.
Hurt? Did he get hurt at the end of the season?
He had tore his ACL, wasn't it last season? I didn't think it was this season. I thought it was last season when he came back from the knee injury.
He came back this year. He was definitely playing this year.
Yeah.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, you look into it. So just as far as the player, though, averaged 14 points this year, about 6 rebounds.
No, March 11th, he tore his ACL.
This year?
Yeah.
All right. Well, he's out then. But the player, the profile
Cross
of
him
the player.
off the list then?
Cross him off the list. Because I don't know why I thought it was last year.
Yeah.
But I guess that's how the Hawks season went. He seemed like it was a year ago that he tore his knee. But the player, though, just to keep on with the theme of the conversation about the player, ACL injury, so no. But as far as the player goes, if that didn't happen, that would have been somebody I would have at least tried to look into and see what, at the size, the age, contract again, playing off. And he can rebound. He can put the ball on the floor and create it for himself. He can attack those closeouts, as we always talk about. Now, is he going to be the Aaron Gordon type? I don't know, because he has more of that scoring mentality. That's who he's always been. But I just thought that was an interesting name if he was still a starting type and not suffering an ACL injury in March.
He's one of my old colleagues at The Athletic, Mike O'Connor, used to say this all the time, but like a lot of 3-and-D guys are neither really great three-point shooters or great defenders, and I think Saddiq Bey kind of fits into that group. Mm-hmm. He's capable enough from the perimeter that he will get hot. He will even have seasons where he shoots over 40%. But
didn't he have a 50-point game? I think he had a 50-point game.
Perhaps. Yeah. He can certainly get hot. And he can have seasons where he will shoot well, but he will have, like this past year, he shot 31% from 3. Mm-hmm. And he's not very consistent. I think when you look at the back of his baseball card, so to speak, he's not going to be a good three-point shooter on a regular basis. And the defense has always left me a little unimpressed. To your point, I think he is a little too enamored trying to be a shot creator and an offensive weapon to make the most of his defensive tools. I would have concerns over him.
All right, I think you're going to have concerns over another player that I have on my list. Do you have any left, Derek? Are you at the end of your...
Most of what I had left, we talked about him recently, but Denny I think would be great. And not in a player who had a high role and then had to go back, but just as a guy who could grow into an Aaron Gordon type. I like him a lot.
Someone who would pop on a better team,
good playmaking, good secondary playmaking, good decision-making, pretty good physicality, pretty good defender. I like the all-around game that he has, but he's also not necessarily available. And he didn't have a star trajectory, so he doesn't necessarily fit exactly what we're talking about. But he was the one that I wrote down.
Okay, I'm going to give you another guy who's had...
I'll leave the floor for Derek on this one because I think I already know where it's going.
Had delusions of grandeur, still does, I think. Someone who I've actively slandered on this show. Someone who currently plays with one of the vanguard of the new era.
I'm very nervous. I am very nervous.
San Antonio's Keldon Johnson.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going somewhere else.
Now I want to know where you thought I was going with it. But so Keldon Johnson, someone who I think
I had him on my list.
The luster not quite there with him at this point. He was on Team USA, scored 22 points a game a season prior, is being treated as one of San Antonio's building blocks. And I will say, I watched quite a bit of San Antonio this year. And the reason it's tough to make this case is because I watched how he played with Wemby, and I did not like it. I did not like that he took some of the shots that he took. I did not like that he wasn't throwing the ball to the fucking alien-sized man inside the three-point arc who had a seal on someone a foot shorter than him. I did not like some of the passing, playmaking that he tried to do, or maybe didn't try to do.
You haven't even gotten the part of his game that I really don't like.
Which is?
Defense.
The defense has also gone from, wow, he looks like a guy who can be a real defensive weapon to what the hell is that guy doing? But because his stock has fallen as far as it has, and because I think San Antonio is probably just going to have to, I think other than Wemby and Vassell, who I like Vassell, and I think I could probably be convinced into, or he can be convinced into, he'll kind of step aside. I don't see that with Keldon in San Antonio. I think he straight up needs to leave and go somewhere else and go somewhere where it's
he's not getting more shots here.
I am not saying that he is. What I'm saying is he needs to go somewhere where the seniority factor weighs in, where it's made a little clearer to him. Because look, I would blame Pop for some of that, right? You have a guy who's 7'4", and this fucking dude is down there just hey, pull up three with a hand in my face. Some of that is, and I love Pop. I'll never disrespect Pop for his coaching acumen or his resume. He's letting Keldon Johnson run the team a little too much, if you're asking me. So I think if you send his ass packing and the message is hey, you come here and you feed the big dog and you play off Maxey, or you sit your ass on the bench, maybe that sends the message. But I'm just, again, I think the point that you made, Derek, is important, that when Gordon went to Denver, Jokic was younger than Joel is now. And so these would be easy. The bets that I'm talking about and that we're largely talking about as a group would be easier to make if Joel was 26 or 27 or in that range, where if you hadn't already wasted half a decade with Tobias Harris on the team. Who brought it? I can't remember who tweeted this week that was did you know that when they traded for Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid was only 24 years old?
Yeah, I saw that.
And that was just a holy shit. I did not realize
Mike, right?
that. I can't remember who. Was it Mike O'Connor?
No, not O'Connor.
Oh, Mike.
MHC.
Can't remember. Mike C. Yeah. MHC76 on Twitter. I can't remember his last name at the moment. But yes, I think he might have been the one who tweeted it. But so Keldon Johnson fits in that RJ Barrett category of players who I actively don't really like, but I'm squinting and I'm I see the outline of maybe. And
yes, the outline is there. 6'5", good size, really good defensive tools if you ever put them together. Obviously has skills with the ball, but I think it's going to take him a couple years to learn how to play winning basketball, if he ever does, to fully buy into what he needs to defensively to do that. To fit into a role offensively, and I just don't think they're going to have the runway here to do that.
Mike Chiodo. That's Maine threw it in the chat. Thank you, Maine, thank you, Mike Chiodo.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I'll throw one on the way out just to throw an extra one. He's 22, 23, and it's a bad situation there going on in Chicago. So if we're staying in that young guy place, and we look at some of the issues that he may not be as good as they thought he was when they drafted him in the top 5, but Patrick Williams at that age, the skill set, being that he was never the feature, but he was also a guy that they thought in would come
But they drafted high to be a building block,
and
right?
blended him into that starting 5 with those veterans to play the role that he has. the environment is not a winning situation.
Mm-hmm.
While they have been in the play-in tournament, it's not a winning situation. I think they were in the playoffs the one time. And Patrick Williams, although I don't think they do it, if they looked to do it, I would say, hey, Daryl Morey, you making that phone call to get that 6'9" guy with a 7-foot wingspan?
He's still only 22.
And is 22 years of age. So Patrick Williams was the other guy that I had written down as a long shot.
If I'm gonna, because basically there you're saying like, all right, he's a really good defender right now. His 3-point shot, low volume, but has come around the last couple of years. I would lean more towards that than I would an offensive player who has to learn how to do everything else.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think he is available. I don't think he's
think
going
so
to be
either,
available,
no.
but I think that's
Put
a
it this
good
way,
name.
I would certainly go after him before Keldon Johnson.
Yes, and that's the exact archetype I was comparing him against. But like I said, I don't know if I necessarily went there because I think Kyle was more towards the player who's been an offensive focal point and he's dialed back, sort of like Aaron Gordon. But I think in what could become the next Aaron Gordon, I think he deserves mention.
No, I totally understand. I mean, that's why the names that we thrown out are totally different from him. But because of their situation in Chicago, if they even decided to, and he's already played the role, would he fit here? And I think
But
we all say
like I said, the player who could become the next Aaron Gordon, I think that is a fair mention, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe you could be the next Aaron Gordon.
I might be.
You
My
get,
Achilles
you
would
get
be
after
good.
that Achilles recovery in
July, I'm all good, man. Full year.
I've never seen you rebound, but actually that's not true. We had a young child in the office the other day, and Devon was rebounding on the little Tykes hoop. You just got to apply that to 10-foot rim.
I
And
wasn't missing those boards,
you
man.
were not.
Everything.
Listen,
Loose
that
ball,
loose change was getting there.
Loose ball, everything. I'm diving in. I'm getting box out. It's effort. It's want to. Even with that little
It is
orange
want
basketball. Effort and want. Any that you just wanted to throw out there, just as we just walk out, throw them out there.
The person that you were playing with was, you should have been dominating.
I should have been
that
doing
one.
it.
Yeah.
I did it. You can't say anything. I did it. Any names that you had left that you just tossing as we go out?
So in the spirit of the Mikal mention, this is another, we'll do a whole show on him at some point, and we've had a few people begging us to do a show about him for a long time. Markkanen, right? Markkanen was someone who was that second or third guy on a couple different teams, goes to Utah, has an unbelievable breakout season, is now the featured guy there, but is a featured guy on a team that is just, not really capable of winning. And so I think he has already played a secondary role and has shown he can provide value in that role and was the featured player in the Mitchell trade as a result of that and can rebound. If we're talking about, I know Derek is against the general principle of the too big thing, but I think because of the outstanding shooting value that he brings, that he's a different proposition than, for example, a John Collins or a player like that. Can do enough of the secondary stuff creative wise and is just a perfect kind of third guy next to these guys. And it just comes down to, is Utah willing to give him up? Basically, because right now,
how many picks?
Even if they are, I don't think the Sixers probably have the ammo to get him. I think it's basically OKC can outbid everybody if they really wanted to get him.
How many picks you think? 4 or 5? They try to steal from someone?
I mean, look, Danny's ridiculous. I don't know.
And I'm going off of the
don't know.
Gobert thing, of course, starting that.
I do
move.
like this whole thing because I think we've all been like, all right, the Sixers have 5 picks to trade. They need to make a move now. Just throw everything at the best player you can get. Trading 5 picks for almost anyone that's not a star or a superstar makes me uncomfortable. Because the Sixers are boxed in, I think it makes some more sense. But look, he'd be a great fit. I don't think there's any questioning that. Like I said a million times, I would love to have not only someone who can play off of Joel Embiid, but also then play a pick-and-pop game with Tyrese Maxey. Mm-hmm. He is about as good as you can draw up as a realistic option. But yeah, I think it's going to take a lot. I don't know if that means 4, if that means 5. I don't know. But
and he's what? He's a free agent next year?
Yeah, I think he's got a year left.
2 years from now? I think it's next year. And so you have to give a Godfather offer to even be considered for the trade, and then also have to figure out if he's going to stay or not. So really, I think one has to happen before the other.
One of these players who are on a below market deal now with 1 year left that you think is a great fit, I'm pretty sure the Sixers can offer, after they acquire him, a renegotiate an extension. So if they figure out, like, hey, I can get more money this upcoming year by getting to Philly and force my way there, that's what you need, because that's how you lower trade value.
Yeah.
And if you can give somebody an extra $15 million next year with your cap space, use that as a way to entice them to want to come to Philly. Maybe that brings the price down to what you're comfortable with. Yada, yada, yada. I think that is a great option.
Similar to the other guy you were talking about.
Not that we would know anyone who could whisper that message in someone's ear. But
Real Time with the super chat says, I'd rather have Sean Wayans than Kyle Kuzma. That's bad.
That's a great callback from
I
Real
love
Time.
callbacks to previous shows. That's
bad.
A good job.
That's
Thank
bad.
you to Real Time.
If you take Sean Wayans over Kyle Kuzma is really bad because Sean Wayans is really, really bad.
I can't believe our guy, Marshawn Lynch, is talking trash about Markkanen. Disrespectful.
I think Martian just wants to talk trash about anyone.
That's probably
It's fun.
true.
That's like his shtick.
Probably
It's
true.
always
He
fun.
looks like he's having a blast every show, so I can't.
I can't tell if he's
on
having
for
a
it.
blast or his caps lock button is just broken.
Yeah, well,
you know,
it could be both. It could be both.
I wouldn't rule it out that it's both, but we love you, buddy.
Yeah, well, a lot of fun names thrown out there today as possible Aaron Gordon type players to join the 76ers. And we see that you've thrown out a bunch in the chat as well.
I'll give you
They've
this.
been fun.
If you are still with us after the show, I want you to leave a comment on the video and tell me exactly who your target is of these types of players. I want you to put your thinking caps on, maybe a thinking cap with one of those little spinny fans on the top, and then
The multicolored hat.
yeah, and then drop a comment.
All right.
And we'll see. We'll see which one of us had the worst and best ideas.
Go get Isaiah Jackson, man. Never mind. You see him almost get into a fight last night? That was fun.
That was a chippy game, man. There
Yeah,
was
it
a lot of. By the way, I know we've talked about the officiating on the show. That one foul that Scott Foster originally called on Aaron Nesmith, where Jalen Brunson just like
It was so
threw
bad.
his shoulder,
And it was right in front of him.
looking right at it.
Right in front of him.
That's like some of these bang plays. Like, okay, whatever, it happens. It's the playoffs. Everything's moving very quickly. A lot of calls happen in a game. You're gonna miss a few. You can't miss that one. That's just horrendous. Come on.
That was really bad.
Come on.
That was really bad. Yeah, some
But then
tough stuff in there.
Every time I tweet about any officiating stuff, Knicks fans are like, you're still salty about the Sixers series. It's like, brother, I'm going to bed at a reasonable hour. My diet is better. I don't know what you think I'd be mad about. I'm just watching hoops just like you are.
Yeah. It's been good hoops, though. Derek, you're going to be off the next couple of days. Anything stand out in these games before they wrap up these series while you're away?
I mean, it's been really. First of all, watching the Knicks grab 20 freaking offensive rebounds when like half that team is injured and playing 85 minutes per game.
Man.
It was.
Oh, he's made himself a lot of money.
He's the guy.
A lot of money.
He's the guy. He's the other guy.
Legitimate hats off to them, and just the way Denver has figured it out. Like it's really been really impressive to watch them come back.
I rarely feel bad for NBA players. I felt a little bad for Rudy Gobert last night. There were some possessions where he's playing great defense for like 15 straight seconds. And then Jokic just throws in this fucking twirly shot where he's like, he's putting English on it with like his offhand as he's falling backwards.
Off the wrong foot.
What the hell is going on here? Then he's hitting him with the slip on the screen, and it's like, dude,
It was personal.
Oh, that was
personal.
He loves killing that dude.
Did Gobert say anything? Because I don't think he said anything. Not that we heard, but outside the money thing.
I will say this is a while ago now. There was a
golly.
This
killing him.
This clip resurfaced. There was an interview Jamal Murray was doing where I don't remember what year it was. Apparently, it was a game that Jokic had a big night against Gobert. I don't want to say how big because it blows the story, but he's like, Jokic is just giving it to this dude, giving it to this dude, giving it to this dude, and they were about to offer help to Rudy or send like extra bodies toward Rudy, and Rudy's like, No, I got this. I got it. And according to Jamal Murray, the next time he just looks at Gobert and he goes, brother, I got 47 points.
Oh, yes. Yes, I do.
I was just dying laughing at, like, Gobert, like, sticking the chest out. Like, I got this.
Man.
It's like, bro, he's about to drop fucking 50 on you. What are you talking about?
That's funny. He was destroying him.
Yeah. I mean,
night.
what an unbelievable performance.
And he
from him.
always
Not
had
just
that
last
look,
night,
too,
but
man.
after games 1 and 2, Jokic honestly was not good to start this series.
Yeah.
And all the talk between the games, Shaq going on national TV and be like, yeah, SGA should have won.
We blame it on Shaq, man.
And then this dude has come out just throwing haymakers for 3 straight
woke
games.
him up. Yeah.
Credit to that guy.
And the other bad part, too, when you say you've kind of felt bad, it's, all right, Rudy Gobert is not an offensive player by any stretch. So he has that look on his face of the guy you always play with that you know can score. You're trying to keep him involved offensively. They're throwing him the basketball even though you know you shouldn't throw him the basketball on the offensive end. He does something. It's a bad play, turnover, charge, offensive foul, whatever it might be. And he just has that look of these guys are going out of their way to dap him up like, yo, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But you've all been around that guy. You've all been around that guy. And this is with 20,000 people in the building watching you get destroyed. You just made a stupid-ass play on the offensive end where you look even worse, and you just got that look that you've all seen as a basketball player of like, yeah, he is defeated on the inside on the offensive end. And even when he's wide open and they're calling for it, they're hesitant to throw it to him because he might fumble the basketball and it might go the other way or out of bounds. And that's the bad part. I don't feel bad for him. It's just whatever. It is what it is.
Well, so
stop doing this. Stop talking, and you won't have to feel bad.
He didn't get fined for this, right?
Yes, he did.
No,
75
grand.
75 grand.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew he got fined because the first time was like 100, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he got one.
So-
I think it was yesterday.
That's the other thing. You do that when you're defeated. You know that wasn't. Come on, man. And it is what it is.
Have we?
Yeah.
How many? Jokic just
Call him
had,
whatever you want.
Jokic just had 2 dunks in what, 2 games?
Yeah.
Has he had dunks in not like so? I'm sure he's had dunks in consecutive games, right? But he's had 2 that are just like parting of the Red Sea, just like drive down the middle dunks.
And
the
he
last
normally
couple
turns it
games.
over and lays it up.
Yeah.
And he's just making a point of dunking it at that point. Yeah.
don't-
They have figured it out. Yeah.
I don't know what happened in that. Well, I do know what happened. They got pissed off. And here's my big takeaway from this series. They didn't fucking care about that Lakers series at all.
Yeah.
That was like,
Yeah.
they might have been in second gear.
They didn't care if
for
that went
5
7.
games.
They knew they
it
were
was-
winning that one. No, they didn't care at all. And the way that they changed their defense too, to slow Anthony Edwards down after his 40-plus points the other night, that defense that they threw at him yesterday was exceptional of doing that. And then Cat had another tough, night with his silly fouls and takes himself out of
Played
the
reasonably well through about 2.5 quarters, and then
And
it was over.
And it was low scoring. That was the thing. They were in it. It was 50-44.
I will say Ant skated for what I thought was like they played great defense on him. I thought it reminded me of the questions and concerns about him coming out of Georgia where the transition defense, off-ball stuff, he was checked out in a major way because he was struggling on offense. And that was...
It's not even struggling. It seemed like he was just a bystander because they were doubling him so quickly.
They phased him out of the offense, and I think he allowed that to take him out of the game entirely. And look, he's
And it
young.
affected
it's
everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those games that he needs to learn from in order to become, the player that I think everyone is already saying he is, but that he might one day
Can they
eventually
push it?
become.
Can they push it to a game 7?
Well, we'll see what Baguette Biombo has for Jokic in game 6.
Oh, man. All right.
Sorry, I made myself laugh too
Boston
hard now.
closed it out against Cleveland last night. No Donovan Mitchell. We talked about that a little bit already. No Mitchell.
Hold on, Michael B wants to
tonight.
see me versus Derek in a drinking Olympics. I don't know how much Derek can drink, but I'd place some bets on myself.
I would place some bets on Kyle too, especially since I'm not drinking because I have a long drive home. So no.
There you go. No Mitchell tonight for Cleveland already. He's ruled out. And that series is over. We think.
I wonder what Devon and I might be talking about
Might
while
have to
Derek's
get
on
into that a little
vacation.
bit. And Dallas OKC, game 5, 2-2, back to OKC. That's a fun series as well. All right.
All right, everyone.
This was a fun show.
While I still have some voice left, Want to say thank you to the number one roaster in the chat, Martian Lynch.
What up, Martian?
Got Michael Belfatti, Fusion, Garbmello, Public Enemy number one, Money Mar, Eugene G. Ross,
Gene, what up?
MBD,
all of the letters.
DBF.
Yes, all of the
Always
letters.
making me look real closely at that so I don't get the letters out of order. Jay of the Jungle, SB Cold,
What
Dave,
up, Jay?
my girl Winona,
Nona.
Lost Sleep TV, Aaron,
Aaron.
Maine, Elaine Bruno,
What up, Maine?
Jonathan Chen, our super chatter of the day, Real Time with Prince Blue.
Except for he likes Sean Wayans, though.
Oh,
That's
no.
the problem.
I don't think it was really an endorsement of Wayne's.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Coach Lowell Ricketts, Chris D, Cannoli.
Holy cannoli.
Always got to get the holy cannoli. Kane, X-Man, Jeffrey Stewart.
What
I'm
up, X?
sure our guy Al, the 2-minute warning, was in here. We got Luke P. Who else?
Luke.
On my own yam snow !
That's an interesting one.
We had a whole thing about him on the show either yesterday or 2 days ago, if I'm remembering correctly.
I forgot that one.
Wing Ding 22, the greatest font in Microsoft history, right there. Wing Ding. Our guy Haidar overseas, Spencer Cotman.
What up, Haidar?
I think that's probably about enough.
What
for
up,
that.
Al?
AJ Martinez, you get the last shout out of the day, my friend. And to all of you, if you could hit that subscribe button
no
on the
boots.
way out.
Martian said no boots.
I don't remember seeing Boots.
I didn't see Bootzilla, but Bootzilla,
You
we
just get
still,
one. What up, Boots?
we still love you, right?
Boots.
Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. If you hit the thumbs up, Devon and I are going to talk about Donovan Mitchell sometime in the next 3 shows.
You better believe it.
And that one is a guarantee, as Charles Barkley would say. We will see you tomorrow at 2:30.
Well,
Goodbye,
The whole
everybody.
point of Donovan Mitchell, he's going to make Jimmy Butler available. That's the whole talk. Should be the three-way
there you
trade.
go. That's another part of our show now. All
Don't
right.
be giving away the show.
Thank you, Bree.
We all silly like the mayor.